It was 24th February 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine on the pretext of demilitarization of the Azov battalion and caused severe criticism from the West. On September 25th, the United States warned Russia of catastrophic consequences. Upon this warning, Elon Musk tweeted that if Russia continued to stay on the path they were on, the world would see a massive collision between the two world powers, the United States and Russia, which may have global consequences. But exactly how is it happening, and why are people saying that Elon is right? Are we directed towards World War III, or will things calm down? To get answers to all these questions running through the mind, make sure to watch the video until the end, as we've compiled all of the information available to the public. Several reports from the Kremlin suggest that Moscow is planning to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. The United States security advisor had commented that if Russia took any incorrect steps, Moscow would have to suffer from catastrophic consequences, as Washington would not overlook this blatant breach of global rules and would directly respond to the actions. Despite this warning, he had been ambiguous about the response he was planning to Moscow, but specialists suggest that his words were well understood by his Russian counterparts. The Americans have been in contact with Russia about the situation prevalent in Ukraine. The threats by Russian President Vladimir Putin, too, did not go unacknowledged either. According to Elon Musk, Vladimir Putin is not following the script, which gives strong reasons as to why he cannot compete with the United States and NATO. To know the reasons, continue watching as it will come back in the video. Despite the many proofs of the limitations of the Russian military, he has not reacted in the way he should have. The Biden administration has not been able to analyze and grasp these situations, but Elon Musk managed to. Nothing seems in control of any of these countries according to him. The script mentioned the cost of what it will take Russia to compete with the USA, and they simply do not have enough funds or the economy to win. When Putin was confronted with the explicit threat of severe economic penalties and military retaliation from both the United States and Europe if he invaded Ukraine, he released warnings rather than backing down. After his unrelenting verbal attack, he then upped the ante by unleashing a brutal torrent of artillery and rocket attacks on Ukrainian defenses in the Donbas region, heavily betting on Russia's vast stockpiles of munitions to outlast those of Ukraine and the West. The firebrand combination of Ukrainian bravery and Western military technology stalled his attempt to capture Kiev. After suffering multiple setbacks, he chose to go big instead of cooling down. Now that's some war-causing actions. He is escalating the conflict rather than calming it down by choosing to call up Russia's military reserves, expand its defense sector, annex more Ukrainian territory, and threaten a nuclear strike if provoked. Everyone failed to understand the situation properly and analyze his actions. Even if someone shared Putin's views on Ukraine and distrust of the West, like much of Russia's political class, a different leader may have handled the situation in another way. However, the survey results that a large number of Russians are gravely concerned about the possibility of being encircled by the US and NATO implies that there may be more to Russia's actions in Ukraine than Putin's heavy-handed actions. States can act in breathtakingly dangerous ways when they believe their survival is in jeopardy. In contrast to Russia's existential fear of Western encirclement, Putin's misplaced ambition goes in a different policy direction. Putin's bellicosity underscores the growing power of Russian nationalists who have gained clout not only in the military and security services but also in grassroots society. They are angry and belligerent, and they want the Kremlin to reclaim traditional Russian areas, including Belarus and parts of Ukraine. They have originally regarded Putin as being overly ready to strike deals with the West and overly cautious to defend countrymen abroad. Musk has done a lot to assist Ukraine economically in its defense against Russia's invasion. Now he is doing Ukraine, the United States, and the rest of the world a favor by emphasizing the importance of a diplomatic solution to complement the military pushback against the Russian forces in Ukraine. He considers placing Putin in the position of having to choose between humiliation and nuclear escalation as a recipe for disaster. In recent years of war, Russia has suffered several setbacks after Ukraine's counterattacks. Ukrainian forces have successfully diverted the attention of Russia by using weapons and tactics given to them by the United States and NATO. Currently, as we speak, Russia controls about 15% of Ukrainian territory. They have captured the industrial hub of Ukraine, which is Donbas, and are attempting to take over more areas. According to US intelligence, Putin is thinking in a very harsh and befogged way. His thoughts have been blurred with power and weapons, and his failing health. He believes that Ukraine should not exist at all. Therefore, it is expected that he will continue to attack the country, and it's also expected that the US would continue to do whatever is needed to provide all the help and support it can. Even after the United Nations General Assembly voted that the Russians withdraw their troops, little change can be perceived at the ground level, where the war continues rampant. The invasion drew broad worldwide condemnation from countries and intergovernmental organizations, prompting political reactions including increased sanctions against Russia, which had far-reaching economic consequences for the Russian and global economies. Ukraine received humanitarian and military aid from the European Union and other Western states. The EU also imposed economic sanctions, including a prohibition on Russian aircraft accessing EU airspace, a swift restriction on some Russian institutions, and a ban on certain Russian media outlets. Reactions to the invasion have ranged widely across a diverse range of issues, including public reaction, media responses, peace attempts, and an evaluation of the invasion's legal consequences. People are panicking, and it is visible across stock markets all over the world. Protests and demonstrations were staged in many countries, some of which took place in Russia and the Russian-occupied territories of Ukraine. On social media, calls for a boycott of Russian products proliferated, and hackers targeted Russian websites, notably those run by the Russian government. After the invasion, anti-Russian sentiment increased against Russians who resided overseas, beginning a tide of Russophobia. The fog of battle makes it impossible to pinpoint the precise number of civilian and military fatalities. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights believes that there have been many more civilian casualties than the UN has been able to certify. As of now, the exact number of people lost during this intense period remains unknown. In the long 7 months since the beginning of the military operation, around 20,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been lost to the war, along with more than 5,000 civilians and more than 8,000 wounded, while 5,000 people in the Russian force have died. The situation just seems to continuously go out of control instead of calming down with time. Tension and stress have been spread all around, especially within the United Nations, as they have not been able to control or analyze the conditions yet. Putin's reckless behavior has cost a lot more than just money and resources, as it has cost people their loved ones as well. The United Nations has said that the refugee crisis has been the fastest growing and tough to handle situation, and they haven't witnessed such a crisis since World War II. Things are surely spinning out of hand. The suffering will lead to trauma between Russia and Ukraine for life. The most recent news which is available to the public is that Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, instructed his administration to take control of the nuclear plants on Wednesday. Russia seized the Zaporizhzhia facility in March, shortly after invading Ukraine. The largest nuclear plant in Europe is continued to be run by Ukrainian employees. This is a major success for Russia and a big threat to Ukraine and its allies. Recent months have seen shelling in the area, which has stoked worries of a nuclear calamity. Ukraine and Russia have blamed one another for the strikes. Nobody seems to calm down. The European Union has blacklisted Russia and has banned its import and export as well. Russia is facing issues too as consequences of taking abrupt actions, but that doesn't seem to stop Putin at all. Several issues have arisen due to the war from minor to major. The only action visible right now, showing a little hope of the war coming down, is Russian partial mobilization. While Moscow's most fundamental military objectives have not yet been met after more than 7 months of fighting in Ukraine, Russian forces have recently suffered a string of deaths on the battlefield, forcing Putin to declare a partial mobilization. We have no predictions about what will happen except for Elon Musk's saying of catastrophic consequences. If the matters doesn't revolve between Russia and Ukraine, we will all face severe issues and will go through a major change both politically and economically. But we can say that we will keep you updated. That is it for today's video. Comment below what you think will happen and share your opinions about this war.